this as well, or not?
So you can.
Though having left the house at 5 o'clock or something this morning feels like good afternoon, really. But fantastic. Good afternoon. A warm welcome to, honestly, this, isn't it, a fantastic, extraordinary building here for the launch of the Digital Poverty Alliance National Delivery Plan. And just to say that, it's really wonderful looking around the room today at so many faces that we know so well. So thank you all for coming. There are, I think, something like 350 people signed up to participate online today, and some very, very funky kit here to do that. So whether you're here today in person or online, we just say very welcome indeed. And I just felt, we felt all along, people have asked us why we're here, and I'll say a bit more about that in a second, but it is such an appropriate place for us to be launching the community, having the community launch of the National Delivery Plan. You'll probably know, but if you don't, I'll just say that Leeds Central Library and many other libraries have played a really important role over many years about being a place where people can go for digital access if they don't have the kind of access that we'd all like them to have at home. And so it's always been, libraries have always been a place to go. Leeds Central Library particularly, though, and actually I was going to say also during the pandemic, I don't know if you remember the pandemic, but there were stories and pictures I'd seen of school children and others literally sitting outside libraries because that was the only place where they knew that they could get Wi-Fi, even if the library wasn't open. So libraries have played a really important role during the pandemic and for many years before then. Leeds Central Library, I know, have also been involved very much in helping to set up what is now 100% digital Leeds. And so for us, it was an obvious place to come for the launch. We launched on Monday at the House of Lords, but it was obvious from us, from everything that Leeds is doing, that here was the place that we needed to be. So I'm going to say the City of Leeds, through the work of 100% Digital Leeds, and I've just seen Sean there too, and other initiatives like the Leeds Digital Festival, is innovating and driving forward this really important agenda. And I completely share and applaud the ambitions here in making Leeds, and I quote, the most digitally inclusive city for everyone. So to all of you here in Leeds, and those that I know from places like Greater Manchester, doing the work in Greater Manchester and Salford and so many other places around the country and looking online as well, I just really wanted to say one thing. You are inspiring, and you make me and us at the DPA ever more optimistic that this pernicious and debilitating issue of digital poverty is solvable. So thank you for all your work. Now, I think a little bit of housekeeping, just to say I'm sorry, but the lifts aren't working today. So grab somebody and ask how to find your way around. I've been lost a couple of times already this morning. Also to say, I think that the loos, if you need them, are back out that way and left, and exits, if you need them, back out that way and right. So I'll show you the agenda then today, and you've probably already seen it. So first of all, opening remarks from me. So you have to listen to me for a little bit longer. But really importantly, of course, you'll shortly hear from Tom Lowe, who's our head of policy and comms at the Digital Poverty Alliance, and the wordsmith of the National Delivery Plan. And also from the Digital Poverty Alliance and Learning Foundation, you'll hear from Neil McLean, our chairman, who will close the proceedings later on. I'm also really pleased to say that some really brilliant people are joining a panel with our Chief Operating Officer, Elizabeth, at 12 o'clock. And these include Amy Hearn. Amy, are you here yet? Oh, hello, Amy. Thank you, from here in Leeds. Cameron Malik, Chief Executive of the Disability Rights UK, and Julia Adamson too from British Computer Society. And I have to say, thanks to the efforts of Julia and Freddie and our chairman who also works with BCS, they've become a really important partner for us at the DPA and will continue to be, I think, as we look forward. And also, by chance, Rashik Palmer, who's the CEO at British Computer Society, is also a Leeds man through and through. And I know that he was really hoping to be here today, but sadly couldn't be. I'm also very happy to say that in true charity fashion, that we're sharing the opportunity today in terms of the building and the event as a whole with our really, really important partners and good friends from Digital Leaders and their CEO, Robin Knowles, who Robin was telling this lovely story earlier on about how everybody knows him. He was in the, can I tell them about he was in the pub the other night after our launch on Monday, and somebody, just with 3 people that he'd met, he knew from the event, and he was sitting in the pub having a beer, and somebody, one of the people there said, "Robin, does everybody know you?" And at the exact moment, somebody completely random walked into the pub and said, "Robin Knowles, how are you?" So everybody does know. So if you don't know him, that's Robin Knowles over there, and he'll say a bit more a little bit later. So a bit more serious stuff from me now, and that's really just to say that after all the work, I get to say something serious. So today and the launch of the National Delivery Plan is something that I personally, but I know many of you too, have been looking forward to or been waiting for a long time. It's just something that's been wanted, I think, for a long time, and it's just fantastic to finally be able to get it out. We feel that the UK is at a unique moment in time right now, and we feel that so many aspects of life, and you know this to be true, because I know that's one of the reasons you're all here today, but so many different aspects of, including how we learn, how we participate, and how we transact, are now being shaped by digital technology. So at this juncture, we could go one of 2 ways. We can either advance as a truly 21st century digital nation, and that's the words I hear from government, where everyone is enabled or engaged, which are not the words that I hear from government, or leave large proportions of our society ever further behind, with all the negative consequences for them as individuals and families, but just as importantly, for society, the economy, and the UK as a whole, and people underestimate that. We firmly believe at the DPA that future generations will view how we address what we describe as digital poverty as one of the defining features of the next few years. Now, the scale and pace of change, and again, many of you are in the tech sector, so you know just when you've got the hang of something, there's something else comes along. The scale and pace of change inevitably means that addressing this challenge goes beyond any one organization, company, or government department. And certainly more than any of them can achieve working in isolation. So an interconnected digital world requires an interconnected strategy. Now, people also ask me about how optimistic or pessimistic I am about achieving our goal, which is to end digital poverty by 2030. And I did touch on this a little bit before, but actually I'm quite optimistic. And there are 4 reasons, four reasons why I am optimistic. And again, many of you will recognize these for sure. There has been and continues to be really tremendous and generous responses from communities, from companies, organizations, and individuals. Whilst those responses have always been well-meaning, they don't always have the impact that people would like to see, and that's because they've lacked support and access to information and resources needed to affect the kind of real, lasting and positive change that we all want to see. Secondly, the relatively low cost of devices and connectivity, but especially when compared to the financial, social and other benefits that can accrue to individuals and families. It's not inexpensive. When Learning Foundation first started, you know, there were no iPads and things, and even if when they did arrive, they were £1,000 each, so this was beyond the reach of schools and school children and families. Thirdly, the network of individual digital champions and local organizations already exists in substantial form across the country, with thousands more who are ready and willing to help through volunteering and are simply waiting guidance on the best way to approach this. And lastly, and this I think for me is really the most important one, and that is leadership. Leadership can be found across the UK, from major metropolitan mayors, such as here in Leeds and in Greater Manchester particularly, thinking about the work in GMCA particularly, and also in many small local authorities, councils and neighbourhoods. What is lacking for me is leadership at a national government level. Now, before I say more about that, all I would say is that there are already fantastic work going on in places like Scotland and Wales, for instance, that have digital strategy which equate digital literacy with numeracy and literacy, for instance. So where we're really lacking leadership is at a UK level and certainly in England and in Northern Ireland. So those are the 4 reasons why I'm optimistic. So much of the infrastructure is in place, so many people wanting to affect change here. And the Digital Poverty Alliance aims to maximize the impact of all of these elements. So sharing what works, and most importantly, keeping a focus on what works for hard-pressed individuals and families, and particularly hard-pressed at the moment, as we all know. So our collective actions are coherent, and we simplify rather than confuse. And that is the fundamental rationale behind the National Delivery Plan. So we all know that we're living through a period of tremendous transition, and inevitably our plan will need to adapt to changing political, economic, social and technological circumstances. We will need to be flexible and not overcommit on the basis of a hazy understanding of what the future might bring. So the plan sets the direction of travel. We hope you continue to work with us on the next steps of the journey. Thank you very much. Now, I'm quite finished. I'm going to introduce you to Tom Lowe now, our Head of Policy and Comms at the DPA, who was the central editor. I call it he edited, main editor obviously, but the central editor really of all of the thoughts and discussions, research and ideas from hundreds of people and organizations, many of whom are here today and watching us online as well, I'm pleased to say. I can't underestimate what a mammoth task it was, but a challenge which Tom rose to with great fortitude, and I know no small number of sleepless nights as well. So thank you very much for the hard work on that, Tom. Over to you.
Great, thanks Paul, and hi everybody. I'm really pleased to be here today for this event at Leeds Central Library. So I'm just going to provide a bit of an overview of the National Delivery Plan. So that will be about 15 minutes. And then there'll be an opportunity for any comments or questions at the end. Just as this slide says, please do feel free to share information about the event on social media. So, to start with, what is the National Delivery Plan? So the National Delivery Plan is essentially a major strategic document that sets out a vision to end digital poverty by 2030. So we focus on both short-term actions and long-term actions, and we structure the plan around 6 core missions to end digital poverty. So there are 3 core elements of the plan. There's firstly a short overview strategy, so that's a condensed version of the plan that is about 10 pages long. There's then a longer enhanced version of the plan, so that goes into a bit more detail around the missions and the actions. And then we also have a digital dashboard and a web version of the plan. So the digital dashboard essentially allows people to filter the actions based on a number of different categories. So I just want to talk briefly about our process to develop this plan. So this has been the culmination, as Paul has said, of many months of work, of talking to stakeholders to try and develop and refine some of our key messaging and key actions. But the real catalyst for the work started in June of last year with the publication of the UK-wide Digital Poverty Evidence Review. Now, from the evidence review, that set out 6 recommendations, and those 6 recommendations formed the basis for us to convene a series of expert panels. So those expert panels acted like mini focus groups, in effect, that were helping us to develop the actions and to develop some of the narrative around the NDP. Alongside that, we also engaged extensively with stakeholders across public, private, and third sectors, and that's led us to where we are now with the publication and launch of the NDP. We have tried, I think, throughout this process to be collaborative in how we've produced the document, and we're really, really grateful to all of the individuals and organisations who were so generous with their time and their expertise in helping us to develop this plan. So from that, we arrived at 3 key messages. So our attempt to synthesise the plan in essentially as few words as possible. The first message emphasises this important element of collaboration, this idea that we need to work in partnership to end digital poverty. And we think that that partnership working should be affected towards the introduction of a UK-wide digital inclusion strategy and an integrated programme to ensure sustainable and affordable digital access for all. So ensuring that cost is never a barrier for individuals to access the digital world. The second key message focuses on this idea of digital access being a basic right. So no longer can we say that it's a luxury. It is so important to so many aspects of our lives that it is, we argue, a basic right. And to that effect, we need to ensure that everybody has the resources and the support to be able to use the online world to realise tangible social and economic benefits. So we need to make sure there's a degree of equity in how people are able to access the online world. Thirdly, we focus on digital poverty as a technological problem, and it's certainly true that it is about a lack of access to technology, but at its heart, it is really about people, and it's about communities, and it's about how individuals and communities can best be supported to realise benefits from access. And to that effect, we think that it's very important to expand our knowledge of what works, how we develop solutions to meet people at the point of need, meet people where they are, and work with local communities so that they can best coordinate and best support their residents and overcome digital poverty. So, as I mentioned before, the plan is based around this idea of 6 core missions. So the 6 missions were based on the 6 evidence review recommendations, and just to summarise them very briefly, the first mission very much focuses on this aspect of raising awareness. So we know that there's a huge ecosystem that currently exists to support people experiencing digital poverty, but we need to raise awareness across all parts of society that action needs to be taken on a sustainable basis. Mission 2 focuses very much on this issue of data and device poverty, so ensuring that everybody has access to affordable connectivity and they're able to use that to access the online world. Mission number 3 very much focuses on ensuring equity in how people can access the digital world, and really prioritises these ideas around accessibility, safety, ensuring that inclusiveness is baked into all digital product and service design. Mission 4 then focuses on skills, ensuring that everybody has essential digital skills, and the provision of those, of the support to gain those skills is adaptable and flexible to change in line with changing technologies and changing needs. Mission number 5 focuses on research, so building that evidence base about what works. And mission number 6 is about how we can coordinate local capacity to deliver the kinds of solutions that will be impactful. Now, the approach that we've taken to the NDP is based around a phased and iterative approach. So one of the challenges we have is this target in line for 2030, but it's very difficult at this point, given the inherent uncertainty of what the economy will look like, what technology will look like, what society will look like, to be able to have that longer time horizon at this point. So the phased approach works in that we're going to have both short-term actions and long-term actions. So for the short-term actions, these are for delivery in 2023 and 2024. But the longer-term actions, we identify that these need to happen by 2030, but we haven't set a definitive timeline for when those will need to be completed by. Another important point I think to make about the NDP is that we don't intend for it to be a static document. It's something that very much will change and will be allowed to incorporate feedback and change in line with changing circumstances. So we're planning on that basis to release an updated version of the plan on an annual basis to make sure that it is responsive as it can be to the current context. So what I've set out on the next two slides is just an overview of some of the short-term actions for 2023 and 2024. I won't go through all of the actions in turn, but I just wanted to draw your attention to our assessment of the chance of action success. So the chance of action success is based on two key criteria. The first is our understanding of and appreciation of work that's currently being undertaken to further an action, because we know that the UK does have a well-developed digital inclusion ecosystem where many of these actions are being addressed in some form. And the second criteria is based on the degree of implementation clarity we have about how we would take forward an action. So if we're not aware of work that is currently being undertaken with respect to an action, if we see the path to implementation being relatively straightforward, then we'd say that that has a high chance of action success. If, however, the path towards implementation appears a little less clear at this point, we recognise that's an opportunity for further discussion and consultation, but we say that that's got a lower chance of action success at this time. So just to run through the missions. So mission one is, again, very much focused on this idea of raising awareness, making sure that all sectors across society are aware of the challenge of digital poverty. Because we have a broad advocacy coalition that already exists to support these efforts, we've rated the chance of action success for 23 and 24 as high. Mission number two is focusing on data and device poverty. The main sort of things we're looking at in the short term for that mission is on how we can encourage employers to donate their tech for reuse, refurbishment and donation, as well as seeing what could be done for internet service providers to build on a lot of the great work that they're currently doing in terms of data donation. Mission number three then is focusing on that equity piece, ensuring that everybody is able to access the internet in a way that suits their needs. And so in the short term, we're focusing on building on a lot of the great work that's already underway in terms of public sector accessibility, but then also making sure that there's the opportunity to build on the existing work when it comes to media literacy and promoting digital skills. Mission 4 then is focusing on skills. So we see a big opportunity over the short term to ensure that where you have official bodies like the Digital Skills Council, that they're able to prioritise action on essential digital skills. We also see a really, really important role for digital champions in terms of working with employers to ensure that their workforces are equipped to boost their digital skills and increase productivity. So we identify that as a key action in terms of Mission 4. Then Mission 5, we've rated this high because a lot of the activity here focuses on building on existing work, such as the Minimum Digital Living Standard project, as well as the work that the DPA is currently doing around proof of concept projects. And in Mission 6, which is very much focused on local communities, we identify that there are key opportunities here to start engaging in a joined up and concerted way with local authorities and housing associations. So those are the short-term actions. We also then have the longer-term, more sort of strategic actions in terms of things that we assess need to be delivered by 2030. So I don't propose going through all of these at this stage, but just to highlight a couple I think are especially salient. The first is number one, around this idea of an integrated cross-sector digital inclusion programme, a new UK-wide digital inclusion strategy, and a long-term funding settlement to build capacity. The idea behind the integrated programme is essentially a pretext, a framework to have a concerted push to raise awareness amongst people that are digitally excluded about the support that's available, but also encourage people across both private, public and third sectors to enhance the support that they're currently provided to those at greatest risk of digital exclusion. The second one I just wanted to highlight is number 2, where we set out this idea of a UK government guarantee of devices, skills and connectivity for the people at highest risk of digital exclusion. So while this may exist in some forms at the moment, we want to ensure that there's some consistency in terms of the provision of that offer. And we also see that social tariffs, although they're not the whole solution to the affordability challenges, are going to be a big part of making sure that people are able to access connectivity. And so we're advocating for an agreement between government and internet service providers in terms of a sustainable settlement on social tariffs to make sure that everybody can afford connectivity. The other one I just want to highlight quickly then relates to essential digital skills, so Mission 4. We think over the long term there's an argument to undertake a UK-wide review or a review across each of the 4 nations in the UK when it comes to the essential digital skills landscape. We know that there's a huge amount of great work that's been undertaken already to help people build their digital skills. But we think that there's more that can be done to understand how digital skills and how digital support can be provided to people who may have complex or various barriers to engagement with education provision. Alongside that, we're very keen within the NDP document itself to highlight stories, because ultimately, as mentioned before, the issue of digital poverty comes back to this idea of people and community. So we're very grateful to the individuals and organisations who were so generous with their time in helping us pull those stories together. In terms of taking the plan forward, so there are 3 key things that we are going to do over the next few months. The first is setting up a new National Delivery Committee to help take the plan forward. So this will essentially be the main body that will help to coordinate activity, to share information, and help us take forward some of the actions that are outlined in the plan. Alongside that, we'll integrate support for the 6 missions into our existing DPA pledge journey. So we're very, very keen at this stage to want to hear from organisations that may be able to support us in taking forward the 6 missions. So on the DPA website, there'll be an option when organisations come to pledge support for one of the 6 missions. So if yourself or your organisation is interested in getting involved, please do take a look at that. And as I mentioned before, we do not plan that the NDP is going to be a static document. It's something that has to be changing. It has to be able to respond to new contexts and new challenges. And so we will plan on putting out a refreshed version of the NDP on an annual basis. We're also very keen to share across social media. So we do have on the Digital Poverty Alliance website a dedicated comms toolkit. So please do share information on that on social media. Alongside that, just sort of linking back to the slide before, so this QR code will allow people to be directed to the portal on the DPA website to make a pledge. So if there's anything in the 6 missions that you think you as an individual or an organisation can help to address, please do get in touch. We'd be very pleased to hear from you. Okay, so I think that does it for my session. So thank you very much for listening. I wonder if anybody's got any comments or questions. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Sheila Bennett from Department for Culture, Media and Sport. Very interested in the scope of what you've got posited there, and the missions and the actions are obviously all very ambitious. Just interested to get a view from you on what you think are the most urgent of them. What are the things that you feel that you absolutely have to go in on early and first to then build the the foundations to achieve the longer term goals that you've set out. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think that very much in the initial phase, so phase one, we've identified very strongly through the expert panels that we conducted that raising awareness is a key priority in terms of making sure, especially that government at all levels, so there is an element of national governments, but also local governments are going to be absolutely crucial with respect to this agenda. So there is an element, I think, of persuasion and sort of winning hearts and minds about how digital inclusion connects to a broader range of important policy priorities. So whether it comes to people managing their health care, whether it relates to people accessing social services, whether it relates to people being able to manage their finances. There's so much that digital inclusion encompasses. But the awareness about that is perhaps not as widespread as it could be. I think that raising awareness piece is also very salient with respect to employers, and we do have many employers that are doing absolutely fantastic work in terms of addressing this agenda. But I think that based on our ambitions, there's always more to do, and that can be in terms of volunteering opportunities. It could be in terms of working to provide digital champions that can support people within organisations to improve their digital skills. But also, I think in terms of donations of devices, I think are going to be very, very important to ensure that that there is a supply for people that may face digital exclusion. So yeah, I think that the priorities that we've identified over the longer term very much relate to these broader structural issues in terms of how you ensure that people can afford access, how they can develop the capability and the confidence to get online. But fundamentally, I think the major priority for us is going to be that raising awareness piece, and from that, I think the rest of the plan will follow.
Thank you. Excuse me. My name is Michael Fletcher. I work for a charity called Community First Yorkshire. I work across North Yorkshire in some very rural areas where there is no existing connectivity, or if it is, it's very poor. So sort of two questions around the cost element that's been mentioned a few times. This might be a question actually for Sheila afterwards, but around, first of all, those sort of so-called hard-to-reach rural areas where cost is an issue, not necessarily from a tariff perspective, but from an installation perspective, where the big operators are not currently active. And I know there are initiatives at local and central government around that. But first question is around what are you doing within this to try and support rural communities? Second question really links into the social tariff element that you mentioned as well, Tom, is again, some of the areas I work in do have coverage, but it's very, very poor. And they feel a bit aggrieved that they're paying the same amount on their contract to somebody 5 miles away in the town that has the same provider, but much better coverage.
Yeah, no, I think those are very important points. And I think that when we come to define what we mean by digital poverty, we refer to a broader range of experiences than just the inability to be able to afford devices and connectivity, because it goes so much deeper than that, and I think that's something that we have tried to reflect in the plan. I think the issue in terms of rural communities is very, very significant, and there are obviously through the Shared Rural Network and sort of Project Gigabit existing schemes that are trying to focus on that. But obviously we recognise there is still a lot more to do, and so we're very interested in where there are sort of alternative connectivity solutions, how far they can sort of be rolled out to rural communities, but it's something that we very much do make a point of in the NDP as a key focus for us. I think then in terms of social tariffs, so what was your point specifically on social tariffs?
Well, it's just some of the communities I've worked with have connectivity, but they might get 2 meg.
Yeah.
But they're saying they're paying the same amount on the contract as somebody with the same provider elsewhere.
Yeah, and I think that sort of it's important that the longer term solutions meet people at the point of need in terms of what is actually going to be sufficient for people, in terms of being able to use connectivity to unlock real benefits. And I think that there's a definition that we're certainly adopting that says that just because people have access and connectivity, that doesn't always mean it's sufficient. And I think over the longer term, there'll be debates as to where you have, for example, the universal service obligation. Over time, will that be sufficient to ensure that you have people that are able to use the internet for the purposes that they need to? So, yeah, I think they're two really important points and something we're very alive to in terms.
Hello, Tom. A couple of questions from the live chat for you. So Wales already has its own digital strategy. So how will this UK-wide strategy fit in with that work that's already going on?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. So I think that when we're talking about advocating for a UK-wide digital inclusion strategy, we're not seeking to sort of superimpose this upon existing national strategies that are working well. I think that it's very much more, how could a national strategy provide the conceptual framework for, firstly, a greater alignment between Westminster government and the nations in terms of funding for digital inclusion, but also where things are working well, such as the cases of Scotland and Wales. I think it would have to be something that builds on rather than seeks to superimpose or seeks to sort of minimise the autonomy and the agency that the home nations have when it comes to their own digital inclusion and digital skills strategy. So you could almost think of it as sort of analogous to a framework, so something that provides the context for more information sharing and more collaboration about what works well, but then ensuring that there's consistency in terms of making sure that funding is provided to communities that need it the most.
Brilliant, thank you. One last one from the live chat. So how will the DPA tackle affordability, given that 1 million people have cancelled their broadband due to the cost of living crisis?
So I think that that's something where social tariffs, I think, have a big role to play. Obviously, cost is a big factor when it comes to social tariffs, but there's been quite a few surveys that have highlighted that there are a range of factors that mean people think that social tariffs aren't sufficient. So anything from concerns about breaking their contracts and sort of incurring mid-break contract fees, to concerns about speed, whether they're actually sufficient in terms of their data requirements. So I think that where we sort of come at it from is that over the longer term, there needs to be some kind of sustainable settlement in terms of an industry-wide social tariff that provides a minimum standard, but also addresses some of these concerns about affordability. I also think that in conjunction, initiatives like data donation also have a really important role to play. But I think that sort of longer term conversation around social tariffs and affordability is one we're very keen to have. So I'm currently being waved off as I think my time has elapsed, but thanks very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks very much, Tom. I'm not going to say much anymore. Just to say, I feel really fortunate as CEO to have such a fantastic team around us developing the work, and as I say, Tom has done just a magnificent piece of work, so thank you very much, Tom. The only thing I wanted to say, Sheila, was actually in response to your question about urgency. I speak always very much from the heart, which is why luckily we've got people who can use their brains too. And just to say, I think it's all urgent. I actually think it's all urgent. I think that last question about people now being cut, 1 million, let's just think about it, 1 million people who were digitally included and are now, at this moment, not. And that's just not something that should be allowed any longer. So we have to do this in stages, which is exactly as Tom says, but the reality is that it's all urgent, so we all need to be, and I think many of you are, putting your shoulder to the wheel as we speak. So let's keep up the momentum, and for me it's fantastic to move from a kind of thought process to action, and that's what really counts now, is that this is not the end of the story, this actually is the start of the story today. I'm now delighted to introduce our Chief Operating Officer, Elizabeth Anderson, who's going to chair a panel with Cameron and Julia and one or two others, I think. So, oh, you.
adjust the microphone so that you can actually all hear me. I'm Elizabeth Anderson. I'm delighted to be hosting this panel today. Thank you so much, Tom, for giving us such an insightful view of the National Delivery Plan and the missions and actions that we see coming out of it. The Digital Poverty Alliance is all about collaboration, and we have some fantastic people here today on our panel who I'm going to ask to join me here on the stage. So we have Cameron Malik, the CEO of Disability Rights UK. We have Julia Adamson, the Managing Director for Education and Public Benefit at the British Computer Society, the Chartered Institute for IT. And we have Amy Hearn, the Senior Digital Inclusion Officer for 100% Digital Leads. So if we can get you all up on this stage, that would be fantastic. While we just get the panel set up, just to reiterate, collaboration absolutely remains key. Coming together, whether it's government, national or local, industry, whether that's big business or SMEs, and charities, whether those are nationally led or community driven, everybody has a role to play in ending digital poverty and in making a pledge for our National Delivery Plan. So I hope that everybody who's here today, everyone who's watching online, is going to be going on to digitalpovertyalliance.org and clicking that Make a Pledge to come forward and tell us how you are going to address an action. Let's get going. So thank you all for joining me on the stage. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and the work that you do. So I'm going to start with Julia, if you can tell us.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, it's great to be in the north. I actually live in the southwest now and in a very rural location actually, so I can absolutely empathise with that. My name's Julia Adamson, I'm the Managing Director for Education and Public Benefit at BCS. We're the professional body for computing and our vision is for everyone to benefit from great IT. We want a world where we're all able to thrive and we support our members, we inspire the next generation, we set standards and we influence the future and we really want to build trust in IT and I think that's where our partnership can really thrive. We focus on people and skills and capabilities and we work with employers and their teams and individuals on developing their capability in all sectors. So whether that's the traditional IT companies that you'd imagine, but also health, social care, fintech, education, retail, food production. Every company is a digital company, isn't it? So, and every role is becoming increasingly digitized. And actually, that digitization has taken place really, really quickly. And thinking about the education sector as being one really important piece of this puzzle to, at scale, ensure that everyone gets the skills and the capabilities they need to be able to thrive in the digital world. That's how we support people to become adults and to take their place in society. And I'm afraid, we need to focus on digitising that education system. You'd be not surprised, I think, to hear me say that today. The good news is, though, that tech professionals are really care about this and are leaning into it. And Freddie is chair of BCS Digital Divide Specialist Interest Group. That's one of our most active member-led groups, and they're working in partnership with the DPA to really understand the landscape, to join the dots, and to try and accelerate that reach and impact that all of these great initiatives are having.
Fantastic, Julia. Thank you so much. Amy.
Hi everyone, my name's Amy Hearn, so I am Senior Digital Inclusion Officer at 100% Digital Leads. So 100% Digital Leads is part of the Integrated Digital Service at Leeds City Council, and we lead digital inclusion for the city across sectors for the council and for the ICB. So I'm part of a small team that works with the different partners across sectors that already offer services and understand the needs of the different people and communities across the city that are more likely to be digitally excluded. And we work with those different partners to understand what that digital exclusion looks like specifically for the people and communities that they support, and then help those organisations to put digital inclusion support into place within those existing systems and services, so that it's embedded within the places that people that are more likely to be digitally excluded go, that it's delivered by the people that people are more likely to be digitally excluded know and trust, and it's utilising the capacity and resource of all of the different partners across the different sectors working as one city. So we work to put that inclusion support into place as a safety net, so that when somebody becomes digitally excluded, because inclusion of course isn't a fixed state, we can support somebody to be included and they can become excluded again as their circumstances change, so that those people that face exclusion at any point in their life have the support there where it's needed, delivered by the people that are best placed to deliver it. Yeah, that's in a nutshell.
Thanks a lot, Amy, and we're delighted to be in Leeds, the home of such a beacon of great practice from a local authority. Cameron.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name's Cameron Malik. I'm Chief Exec of Disability Rights UK. So we're not primarily a digital-focused company and organisation, but what we are is a disabled people-led organisation. We're a national organisation, and we have individual disabled people as members throughout the country, but also in the UK, we're really fortunate that we have lots of local and regional disabled people-led organisations. I purposely use the term disabled people-led because it differentiates organisations like DRUK and the local DPOs from the big charities we often talk about and hear about, such as RNIB, Scope, Leonard Cheshire, those kinds of organisations. Those organisations we would talk about as disability charities. They're often run by non-disabled people, providing services and support for disabled people. The difference of us is we are disabled people, using our lived experience to provide both support and services, but also to advocate, to influence, to try and bring about equality and rights for all disabled people. So in terms of the digital bit for disabled people, I think if we took any community within our population, disabled people have the most to gain from digital inclusion, both in terms of kind of access to goods and services, to employment, but also for social connections. And we saw a lot of that happening during the pandemic, where digital was playing its part really well, particularly with hybrid working. Disabled people for years have been asking for what we call as reasonable adjustments, flexibility to work in a different way. The pandemic was a great testing ground for that, and it actually proved that it can be done, and technology can play its part in that. But also we're conscious that out of the 7 million kind of people who live in poverty, 4 million people of those are disabled people, and the remainder often will have a disabled person in their family. So disability and poverty is connected, and I know digital inclusion is not just about the kind of financial poverty, but it has a big role to play in that. And so what our organization does is, through listening to people, our policy team then influences, advocates, campaigns, and engages with government and other organizations who are influential or in positions of power to try and bring about that change.
Thank you, Cameron, and thank you all for joining us here today. So we're going to kick off. Amy, I'm going to come to you first, then Cameron, and then Julia. So in your experience, what are some of the real-life aspects, real-life impacts of digital poverty on the people you work with, perhaps particularly children and young people or others in your community?
Yeah. So 100% Digital Leeds, we work with all of the different people within Leeds that are more likely to be digitally excluded. We have traditionally focused more on adults than on children and young people because of when we were outlining our work, we recognised that there are schools and children's centres and other statutory services that support children and young people when there isn't that support in place for adults in the same way. But thinking about some of the work that we have delivered for families in particular, I think that the impact on children of digital exclusion is massive. there's all of the stuff that we've seen, you know, during COVID about the move to online schooling during lockdown. That raised massive issues about the number of children in households without reliable internet connections, without access to the right technology to be able to take part in lessons. Certainly children from families with multiple siblings having the right access at an individual level to partake in that. But outside of that, thinking about the family, there are lots of initiatives that are aimed at families that need support that's only available online, and more of those services are available online. So for example, the NHS Healthy Start scheme that provides vouchers for families on low incomes to be able to purchase milk and fruit and vegetables, to be able to support children's diets for those that are on low incomes. That schemes like that are moving online, and there are lots of benefits to that, but there are also lots of issues around people being able to access those services. We've recently done some work with Leeds Community Healthcare looking at the impacts of the move online of school-age immunisation consent forms and information, and how that has increased disparities between the percentage uptake of year 8 and year 9 vaccinations for those households in areas of less deprivation comparison to those of more deprivation. Obviously it's a complex issue because we've got increased vaccine hesitancy after COVID and things like that, but the digitisation of a lot of these systems just makes it that little bit more difficult for a lot of families with children from with lower incomes to be able to access the systems and services and information that's necessary to give them, their children, the same start in life as other children from families with more money.
Thank you, Amy. And it's that kind of slightly hidden issue that I think a lot of us don't immediately consider and can have such an impact. Cameron.
I was so absorbed with the listening. What was the question again?
What are some of the real-life aspects and impacts of digital poverty, perhaps on children and young people or others you work with?
So, similar to what has just been said, really, particularly for young disabled people, technology can offer a way of engaging with their community, with their schooling, with their peers, with family, with friends. And if you don't have access to that, you are excluded from those kind of parts of your life. And particularly during the pandemic, we saw when disabled children came home, if they didn't have the same level of equipment, or support equipment that they would maybe have in school, and they don't have that at home, then that actually meant that that child could not engage with the schooling online. And of course, because of the poverty stats that attach to disabled people and disabled families with disabled children, often those families then won't have the quality of broadband, may not have the most up-to-date equipment. And I think the other thing to remember is, although I'm not a child, just yesterday I bought a piece of software which is a voice control software for the computer I use at home. It's £700. Now, unfortunate, the place I work is able to contribute towards that cost, but that essential piece of software, if needed by a family, £700 is a huge amount of investment on a piece of software that's essential to allow you to access and engage. So even if you've got the latest laptop, the best broadband, you may still be excluded because the software itself is not inclusively designed. So it isn't designed to be inclusive, therefore you need to have additional expense on top of that. So, from a young age, that then starts to exclude you, and that then impacts you as you grow up, as you grow older through your schooling, if you're not having the same experience as everybody else. So lots of kind of similar things to what Amy said, really.
And again, isn't it all of those hidden pieces that a lot of people don't immediately consider, but just making software inclusive to begin with actually could empower so many more families, children, adults, people of all ages and demographics.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, so things like, voice assistants, we all take them for granted on our mobile phones. Those were designed by disabled people in those tech companies because it was something they needed, but now they've just become something we all use, and it's become a form of inclusive technology. And therefore, the cost element's gone because it's built into it. So it's that part's really important.
Fantastic. Julia.
It's going to be hard to add anything to this because that was they were great answers. But I was thinking actually while you were talking, you know, skills in on their own are a precursor to digital poverty and exclusion. And I think, you know, I think the pandemic really did shine a light on that. And not just young people's skills, the adults who work and support those young people, so whether that's parents and carers or whether that's teachers and school support staff, it really did shine a light on the lack of digital skills. And really, if we think about solving this forever, we have to solve that too, because we will always, otherwise, be trying to play catch up with cohorts of young people that are leaving a school system that don't do that. And that's not me sort of saying, well, the school system has to solve it all. It's not that simple, and it's quite a complex issue. But I do think that you can have the access and you can have the connectivity and the device, but you can still lack the skills to actually make the most of this. And then you know, and the trust, etc., follows as well. So. Have I got enough time to tell you about a student very quickly?
Yeah.
So a student who's studying A-level computer science, who was first in family to go to university or wanting to go to university. We met this student as they were aspiring to get a placement. They got an offer to Manchester University to study computer science. Fantastic. They didn't have their own device. They were doing all of that at school and in public library, and we were able to, with the support of our membership, be able to take care of the access issue by providing a bursary and guidance to get the right specification kit, so that student can have what is appropriate and sufficient for an undergraduate studying a computer science degree, and who is aspiring to have social mobility and make that change. And match that young person with a volunteer IT professional coach who's mentoring and supporting them through that education journey and welcoming them into our network of IT professionals. So I think there are great things that we can do together to break down those barriers.
Thank you, and it's great to hear about those individual examples of people whose lives have genuinely been changed by that kind of support. And you mentioned the school system. During the pandemic, the DPA did some research and found nearly half of teachers did not have access to a device at home. Many teachers do not receive a laptop in their school for their work. Many teachers do not have the time then to look at how to build digital skills into their practice. So wouldn't it be great if we could hit a point where the school system allows that time to be spent on that learning for teachers? As we move on, next question is for Amy. We've highlighted local capacity as being absolutely key to solving digital poverty. It's mission 6 if you're looking through your overview document. But there's huge variety across the whole of the UK. How can we make sure that every nation, region and county is best supported to be digitally included?
Thanks. So firstly, I just want to recognise that 100% Digital Leeds and Leeds is really, really lucky to have a team and a programme that's supported by Leeds City Council, by the NHS, to be able to deliver and support the development of a localised approach to digital inclusion, making sure that we have got the capacity and the expertise and the key contacts needed to really drive digital inclusion as a city, meeting the needs of the people in the city and the services across it. That's because we've built that up, basically. So we were really lucky, again, when the programme first started in 2016, to have the opportunity to make a case for that funding support via the council, to be put into forming a team to lead this work. And in 2018, that came into fruition when the libraries service and the housing service came together to support and fund the creation of our team. And that allowed us to develop our approach and demonstrate the outcomes needed to be able to justify a permanent, the permanent support of our team and the embedding of digital inclusion across services in the council. So we're now part of the integrated digital service, and that service has funded us as a permanent team. We've been able to embed digital inclusion into the Leeds digital strategy as a key foundation, recognising that digital inclusion is essential to everything that we do, basically. That's given us the capacity to be able to work with over 200 different partners across the city to embed digital inclusion into the work that they do. And it's something that really no other city has in the same way. A permanent team whose job it is to just do digital inclusion, that's not at fear of, you know, not being there in a few years or being questioned or anything like that. It means that as changes happen at a systems level across the city, we are the key contact to be able to consider and build support around digital inclusion as soon as those projects start. And that's something that is pretty unique. And we've done what we can to advocate for a similar approach to be taken up in different areas of the city and nationally. We share our outcomes and approaches via national platforms as often as we could. We've done a funded piece with the local government association to write up our approach as our community-based approach as a model that other local authorities can pick up and replicate in their area. And we worked with 5 other local authorities to develop that, to make sure that it was something that was going to be workable in other areas of the country. We're working with Leeds Beckett and University of Central London and others on some academic research pieces demonstrating the efficacy of our approach and the impact of it, so that others understand what to do and why it's important and why they should do it. And we're constantly speaking to lots of different people from local authorities and NHS trusts from across the city and across the UK, sometimes across Europe, looking at what they should do and how they should do it and why they should do it. But at the moment, nobody really has a responsibility for making that happen. There's no statutory responsibility for councils to actually do anything about digital inclusion. So there's lots of councils that are doing something, and it might be a person sort of has responsibility for it as part of their wider job, and there's a name that you can find if you look hard enough, but there isn't somebody and a team whose job it is to have the capacity to coordinate, to build, to learn, to share learning, to work with partners. And you can see from the work that we've done, we've brought over £1 million of funding into the city in the last year alone to support digital inclusion, and that has gone straight to our community partners to get what they need in terms of stuff and skills and capacity to be able to support the people that need it most. Nobody else really has that. So yeah, statutory responsibility, somebody making someone do it, I think.
Thank you, Amy, and certainly we will keep advocating for the need to build that local capacity. We are running out of time. I can see the signs. But I'm still just going to very quickly come to Cameron to talk about, do you feel the needs of your community are well represented in the tech industry, ensuring accessibility for all? If I could ask you to keep that really short so we can get Julia's question and then head to the Q&A.
No.
I'm going to ask anyway.
Well, I mean, I don't think so. So not to the level that I think we would want. More companies are waking up to the fact that if you have a diverse team, you get different lived experiences, you end up bringing out better products, services and goods and things. But there's not enough disabled people within those industries designing inclusive tech. The benefit of disabled people being there is that you bring a different lived experience to the product. So if you're a blind user designing a piece of software or an interface, you are going to be thinking about it so differently to a non-disabled person. So actually working in those kind of teams with inclusivity built in is absolutely vital, and we're not there. And we need to get young disabled people to be aspirational about entrepreneurship and in kind of that kind of stream, and providing the support so disabled young people see that as a way that they can kind of head their careers in the technology industry.
Marvellous, thank you. And Julia, just really quickly, because it's such a quick topic to address. We touched on the unique role that schools play. How can we give teachers the time and space that they need to start building digital into the curriculum and enhancing their own skills?
Great question. I mean, firstly, you know, it is, I believe, you know, at scale, this sector where we can make a difference. So 10 million young people at any one time in the education system, and it's great. We've got a computing curriculum, so we're teaching them about this stuff, but we haven't got anything that's telling us to teach with it, and we're not supporting teachers to learn about that stuff, and we're not mandating that head teachers need to have a vision for their schools. It's not in their professional qualifications as a standard, for example, and there's no teacher standard around digital technology. So there's quite a few central levers, I think, that could be pulled. And if, you know, I think that's what we need. We need every school to have this kind of aspirational vision for the use of technology. We need an education system powered by technology. It could be more efficient, more productive. And then young people will leave with the critical thinking skills, the mindset, the flexibility to deal with whatever new technology comes at them, because we'll never be able to predict what's coming next. AI has taken the whole of the education sector by surprise, and they're all grappling with it. Actually, what we need to do is, you know, not worry too much on the specifics of the tech, but it's about having that critical mindset, that open mind, that curiosity to be able to embrace it when it comes, because it will keep coming, that's for sure.
Thank you, Julia. Half an hour goes really fast. Thank you to our fantastic panelists, first of all. If you have a question, we've got 10 minutes for Q&A. Please do say who you are and also who your question is for. So, first question.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Claire Bonetree. I'm from the Family Fund. Fund has for 50 years been giving grants to families raising disabled children on low incomes to have access to the things they need to thrive as a family. So obviously, and we also provide a lot of grants for digital equipment and workshops, so this is very much an area that we've been engaging for a while and intend to obviously keep doing that. And ending digital poverty is really important to us too. On a personal level, just want to say something about digital access. I'm disabled, and thanks to being able to work remotely, I am working nearly full-time, which I never thought I would do. So that's really exciting for me in terms of being able to look forward to retirement at some point, which was slightly scary, as you can imagine. And also because I love what I do. The question I have, though, is kind of about integration, but at a kind of more conceptual level about digital poverty. I was really excited to see in the evidence review that digital poverty is understood in that wider context, the interconnection of kind of social and economic contexts and so on. So my question to, I'm not really sure who I'd put it to, I guess to you, Elizabeth, and then to others on the panel, maybe particularly to Cameron and to you, is what do you think the risks are of separating out digital poverty as an issue, and how would advocating for a national strategy on digital poverty address or mitigate for these risks? And I'm asking Cameron partly because I think you've probably in your role and had a lot of thinking about how types or aspects of poverty get separated out, and the value of that, the risks of it, and how those risks can be mitigated for. Thanks.
Thank you. I think for us, separating it out is absolutely crucial. Poverty is a massive issue. There is absolute poverty, there's food poverty, there's fuel poverty. Digital poverty quite frequently doesn't actually receive the profile. Yet we know that so many millions of people within this country are disadvantaged in so many different ways that exacerbates the other issues that they're facing. So if you're a child and you can't complete your education, if you can't apply for a job because you don't have any means of getting online to write your CV and send it off to people, if you can't find the cheaper deals, if you can't access healthcare, digital poverty creates all sorts of different inequalities. Digital access, it's still seen by some as a luxury. It's a luxury poverty. It's not absolutely essential, is it? We believe the opposite. It's absolutely essential. It underlines everything else. It underlines how people are supported through their lives now. We don't see technology as an end, but we do see it as something that facilitates the services and access and lifestyles that people need. So we feel a national strategy is the only way to get that focus. As Amy was alluding to, if you don't make it somebody's job, quite frequently, it's that one item that falls off the bottom of the list, and it can't keep falling off the bottom of the list. Cameron?
Thank you. I think one thing I will do is connect you up to our policy team. They're the real brains in the organisation, so I will definitely do that. But I think poverty is such a complex and a diverse range of determinants that affect someone's life chances. And for disabled people, so I think it is important to focus on the determinants of that and see where they connect and overlap and influence one another. So for disabled people, a lot of the people that we talk to and work with and represent will often be those people on low incomes, either working part-time, a bit like how you described, not able to work full-time. Some can now because of working remotely. But so a lot of people will be on benefits. The benefit system, there's a whole kind of conversation to have about whether that's fit for purpose. Does it really provide the adequate levels of income to live a decent quality of life? You know, we sanction disabled people who are on benefits. We tend not to do that anywhere else, but we are quite happy to sanction those who are on the lowest incomes to actually make their lives even harder as a way of thinking that that will force them into work. There's no evidence that that happens. And so those things impact on then that individual's inability to be inclusive within technology, to use technology for the benefits that it should and can offer. We're moving at an immense pace of moving everything online. Hospital appointments, accessing local services, everything is going online at a huge pace, and we're leaving people behind because we are not only around kind of broadband and equipment, but just how those systems are not designed with the diversity of people who need to access them in mind. And disabled people will often experience the greatest barriers. And then when you have poor educational outcomes, that then follows you for the rest of your life, because that determines what employment you get, it determines what income you have, where you live. So all of those things, so it's complex, but I think it's right to have some focus on some particular areas and make sure that we understand them really well. But I will connect you to our team. It'd be good for you to talk.
Great. Emma? And then we'll come to this gentleman here, and then we'll see if we've got any live questions.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, everyone. I'm Emma Stone. I work for digital inclusion charity Good Things Foundation. So we're the charity behind the National Data Bank, National Device Bank, and National Digital Inclusion Network. And I loved it, Amy, when you were talking about how as part of what has happened with the 100% digital leads, it's also about getting money, funding to the community-based organisations of all different shapes and sizes, who are those places that are trusted, where people go. And to that point as well, I think the point from Family Fund, I think that was absolutely right, because actually where inclusion works best is people don't necessarily rock up and go, I've got a digital inclusion issue. It's about their health or their education or how they're feeling or other things going on in their lives. So I suppose my question is kind of getting that money to community organisations, how can we do that? And how can we do that in a way that enables those organisations to embed that digital support in what they do, rather than necessarily have to have it as a separate siloed stream of activity?
So I can tell you what we do. I don't know if that's what everyone should do, but it works for us. So we, as I said, we brought, I think it was £1.2 million of funding into the city for digital inclusion last year that went directly to third sector organisations, for the most part, one inclusive health practice. But anyway, all of that money, I don't think any of it, or very little, 10 grand from Clarion, that was digital inclusion. But other than that, the majority of it wasn't digital inclusion money. It was money for something that the outcome could be enabled by embedding digital inclusion. So it was NHS reducing health inequalities money, it was DCMS money, it was various different community pots about reducing social isolation and supporting employability and all of that kind of thing. Very little of what we do is about digital inclusion for digital inclusion's sake, and it's always through the lens of what's meaningful and important to whoever that organisation is supporting. Because digital exclusion and inclusion is like, it's a really, I don't think it's easy to understand, and it's quite abstract. And actually, if you think about what inclusion enables, then you can see about what outcomes you want to see, and that is about people being healthier and having more money and, you know, having a better time, basically. So yeah, we start from the point of what do we want to see and how can digital inclusion help with that, and then we embed that digital inclusion money into a bid that's not really about digital inclusion, but we're going to spend the money on digital inclusion, and then we support the organisations to do whatever it is that they need to do.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to ask the panellists to pick up the pace on the responses, just because I know we've got a load of questions. This chap here, I know, has a question. No, you've got a microphone.
Ooh, okay, yeah, good job. Hi, Chris Daleman, it's my name. I'm from a company called bnode, digital marketing agency focusing on accessible websites and that side of stuff. So there's probably a blanket question which I'll just throw out there to everyone, but it does affect, there's the funding side of stuff. I set this up 2 years ago. According to the government, there was no funding, there was no aspects for anyone that was trying to make any sort of difference in the world. So I just went, right, I'll set my own business up and try and give it a go. So it was very difficult from a financial business startup to get into that. Question on the schools, the sort of educational side. Again, I've been going into schools and colleges and unis to sort of say accessibility is really important to educate the children, that kind of thing. Again, no funding, government incentive or anything to try and help me keep the lights on while I'm doing that and spreading awareness. And from the Digital Poverty Alliance side of things, obviously, it's such a massive topic when you're looking at online accessibility, and that, as you say, the whole world's gone online. There's, go online, have a look, and there's nothing really on there. Again, no support. There's nothing from the councils. You look at a council's website, there's the minimum for tenders is like, can you change the font from small to big, and that's it, great, you're accessible. It's just not acceptable and good enough. So it's not, in order to get there, I've been talking to local councils, governments. I'm from Huddersfield, so Kirklees, Calderdale, the local Labour Party, just trying to go, hi, I'm someone that's trying to make a difference. It's very difficult. So is the Digital Poverty Alliance going to be able to try and unite people in a way to be able to say we can support smaller SMEs in getting in front of the right people to make the difference? And I suppose that goes to the funding side and into schools and colleges and university. I'm sure there's people out there, such as myself, businesses that are going, it's a struggle to try and spread awareness and keep the lights on and do these things when there's no funding available that we can see or be able to do. Big question, I know.
That's going to be a big one to probably finish on. Really quickly, from a DPA side, absolutely. Everything we do is about bringing people together and making sure that people are making the right connections, joining the dots, to use Freddie's phrase, and that's absolutely vital. I would say to everyone, if that's something you're keen to do, go to digitalpovertyalliance.org, click Community Hub, and be part of that conversation, join that network. Julia, do you want to come in quickly on that schools point?
Okay, I'll just reinforce that. I mean, I think, BCS is the great convener, and, join the community and get involved. I think, and to Amy's point about, you know, it in of itself is not very exciting or interesting. Like, we don't do tech for tech's sake. You're doing it because you want to sell a product, you want to provide a service, you want to have fun, you want to watch a movie or whatever. And I think that's the thing for funding, is you need to look for opportunities, because there is funding, local, regional, national level funding to support activity in schools and with young people. But perhaps looking at it from a slightly different angle. But they would be the conversations that you could perhaps engage with us through DPA and through BCS.
Thank you all. I know that we did have some questions online, so I will jump on, and I'm going to ask our panelists if they can jump on the link and perhaps respond to those in the live chat. Thank you so much to Julia, Amy, and Cameron. Round of applause. And it's now my absolute pleasure to welcome DPA Community Board member and sponsor of today's event, Robin Knowles from Digital Leaders.
Elizabeth, can you do the next slide? And then one more. One more. Just press space.
To announce who's on the Deal 100 list for 2023. That's our mission. I'm very excited to be doing that this year for the first time. It's our 11th year, and we're doing it for the first time in God's own county, Yorkshire, which is just fantastic to be here. Thank you to our sponsors who are on the screen behind me. So before we announce who the 100 are, and I think we've got about 150 people online, quite a lot of whom are waiting to hear whether they're on the list this year. We're just going to get a few people to say a few words. We have a tradition, which is we ask the previous year's winner to just step up and say a few words as part of launching the list. So we've got a few people just going to nip up, and then we will get, this is basically for the online audience's benefit, I think, we will then get to who are in the Deal 100. So to start us off, can I welcome to the stage last year's winner, Digital Leader of the Year 2022, Chris Mear, founder and CEO of School of Code.
Hello, thanks very much for that intro. What an awful picture. Probably better than I look, actually, so yeah, maybe it's flattering. It's an absolute honour to speak today on behalf of School of Code, but also digital leaders. I'm a little bit nervous, so I've got some notes, hope you don't mind. Give a compliment to the audience to get them on side. This is the best looking audience I've seen. Make sure it's true. The best looking audience I've seen today. And so I started the School of Code about 8 years ago. And the idea was to try and help more and different types of people get into technology. Because as we've heard today, technology should be an enabler and a real democratizing factor in access to opportunity, but often it can be the opposite, and it can really be a barrier. So a little bit about School of Code and why I started it. My background is actually AI, which I loved. I think I'd applied to do maths and business or English lit at university, something like that. You can tell I was invested in the decision. And I saw artificial intelligence, and I just watched iRobot with Will Smith. Anyone seen that film? It's a great film. And this was pre-Oscars slap as well, so Will Smith was still respectable, and I thought, I'm a little bit like Will Smith, so I chose artificial intelligence and loved it, didn't look back. But when I turned up on the very first day of the course, there's about 100 people in the room, and one of the biggest things, there was a lot that stood out to me, but one of the biggest things was almost everyone could already code. Almost everyone was already quite far into their technology journey, and I think it's something that everyone here might have heard in technology. The common story is my mum or dad bought me a ZX Spectrum or a Raspberry Pi when I was 6 years old, and I took it apart, which is great that there's that route for people, but if you have to be lucky enough for your mum or dad to have bought you the right toy or encouraged you in the right way, then most people are screwed. That's one thing that got me thinking, well, why aren't more types of people, or more different stories in this space? So I stuck with academia for bachelor's, master's, and PhD, and it took me 8 years to realize that academia isn't for me. So I'm not the quickest learner, but when on deciding what to do next after my PhD, I just couldn't see past the cliff edge of automation that I felt like was coming for most people's jobs. And I really wanted to make sure that not just people weren't left behind, but that they had the skills and abilities and confidence to shape the future. And so that's exactly what School of Code is. I started a free coding bootcamp that takes people from absolute scratch, never seen a line of code before, all the way through to professional technologist or developer, and helps them into jobs. So it's 16 weeks, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, really intensive team-based learning that brings a whole panoply of people together, whether it's return-to-work mums, refugees, unemployed people, PhDs in volcanology, sheep shearers, barbers, hairdressers, probation officers, personal trainers, Zumba instructors, you name it, and they sort of come through the course. And really mixing all those people together is the magic of School of Code, because they learn much more from each other than they do from the course. And actually, School of Code is a really bad name for it. I just happened to have the domain name, and I thought it was quite good. But it's the opposite of school in that, it's really team-based, work-led learning. It's like being in a company, a really intense job. And code is the very minimum you'll take away from the course. And actually, code is, the price of entry to a lot of careers. But it's just that, it's the ticket to enter. It's lifelong learning skills that you need to adapt. Because if you think you're going to learn something off a course and then use it forever, that's really not the way the world works anymore. You need constant learning. So the first course was a social experiment, took people from a whole range of backgrounds through 16 weeks of training, completely free. And the model was, to your point, there wasn't much funding. So I backed myself to say, well, if I can train people to a level where they are valuable to companies, then companies should pay. Because companies pay recruiters, and I've never known a company that really likes paying recruiters. So if I could offer them another route, then maybe they'd engage. And so, yeah, took 20 people through that first one. We managed to get 90% of people into tech jobs, which was great, sort of proved actually there's something here. Did another one, proved 95% of people got into jobs. And since then, in the last few years, we've now gone from just in Birmingham, which is why I sound like this, that's where I'm from, to nationwide. So our vision is it shouldn't matter where you are in the country, you should be able to access world-class training and get support landing a technology career. And we're helping hundreds of people a year rather than 20 people a year because we've got a great team in place to help move people through. So, you know, a little bit like you said, you know, that there needs to be support, there needs to be funding, but I think being part of a community, and this is where Digital Leaders really worked for me and the School of Code, being part of a community that is focused on making the world a better place through technology, you know, making things better than when you found them. That's really powerful because doing something is really hard. It's quite easy to sit on the sidelines and criticise, but everyone here and everyone part of that community wants to do something and is willing to sacrifice and work, and exactly to your point, you know, work to the detriment of other things to try and make the world a better place. And to have a community around you that can support with that is great. And yeah, winning one of the awards last year was not just a platform, but a real entry into that community and the ability to collaborate with others that want to achieve the same thing. So whoever wins this year, I'm sure it's well deserved, but even if you don't, really just take the time to appreciate the journey you've been on, because doing stuff is hard, and actually just being able to say you've tried something, you're still standing, most of the time we don't get enough time to reflect on just what we've achieved. So take some time and just say, hey, we've done something here, we're still standing. That's a real achievement in itself. And pat yourself on the back, because it's hard. Don't give up. Ask for help. You're in a community here willing to support you and collaborate, but make sure you take the time to appreciate the journey you've been on. So thanks very much. Thanks, Robin, and cheers.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. So our headline partners this year are a company called AQL, who happen to be Leeds-based, but they're, as you'll hear in a minute, they're sort of international and working globally these days on an incredible range of things to the credit of Leeds as a city. And I grew up around here. You probably tell that from my accent. And Leeds was the twinkling lights, and we got to come about once a month if I was well behaved. So it's just an absolute joy to be bringing the Digital Leaders 100 here today. So can I ask you to welcome to the stage Andrew Morris, Vice President, Product and Development of AQL. Andrew.
Good afternoon. Firstly, I want to kind of relay Paul's comments about what a beautiful venue to be in, real places with real people. It's kind of a nice place to be at and see, you know, the engagement across the board. And kind of relaying to Chris's point, I was one of those geeks who was at home with computers learning about technology, and it is hard. It's hard for children who don't have access to that kind of capability. And my son is kind of following my vein, really, and he wants to go into technology, into programming, and I'm having to teach him how to do that because his school isn't able to provide those services. So all of the conversations from today are very close to my heart, and I'm very intrigued to kind of learn more about School of Code for my son as well. So that's a little bit about, you know, my personal journey as a programmer. So yes, I've been working for AQL for 3 years. I've been very fortunate to be part of the team there. So I'm a Yorkshireman. I've spent my entire life working in the Yorkshire region, very passionate about North and technology in North. And AQL is in our 25th year this year. So we were formed by our chairman and CEO, Professor Adam Beaumont, with a kind of a goal, really, of enabling technology in a variety of industries and not focusing on one single discipline. So across that 25 years, we've been very fortunate to work in a variety of industries, providing connectivity with 4G nationally through our mobile network. And quite recently, we've been very proud to launch our 5G network capability as well. So in the Isle of Man, where we are a registered mobile network, we've launched the first 5G network there. And over the last 2 years, we worked very closely with the DCMS project. So we were chosen for 5 of the 9 projects to launch 5G trials there. And that's been a great learning profile around how 5G can really look at the industries we operate in across Factory of the Future and other capabilities as well. And also around rural locations as well. We work very closely with Mobile Access North Yorkshire to look at how rural locations can leverage these technologies, which are often very challenged. I spend a lot of time in Derbyshire, where I didn't always have great connectivity. So again, these are all very pertinent. As a sort of a telecoms provider, we offer a variety of services also in fibre routes as well. I think wireless connectivity is becoming more prevalent, it's hugely important, but also rural fibre routes and fibre routes across the UK are critical as well. So across that 25 years, we've been very fortunate to establish connectivity from the Isle of Man into the UK, across our national networks, and also into mainland Europe as well. And from there, we're also seeing new emerging connectivities with satellites. We're now looking at the sky for connectivity, and this is going to change the way we operate again and how we move into technology. Thank you. And so again, that's a key part of our area as well. And everything that we do is geared around trying to be the enabler of technology. How can we provide services to our partners so they can give the best innovations in their industry? And I think that's why we're all here, really. I think as a partner of digital leaders, it's fitting that we're here in Leeds to look at the best of the innovation going forward as well. So we've been a partner with Robin and Digital Leaders for many years, and it's very proud to be here as a partner. And I'm very excited to see the nominations and looking forward to the results heading into June as well. So it'll be a great opportunity. So a massive thank you. Again, very welcome. I've really enjoyed all of the conversations today, from really inspiring conversations. And again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Andrew. One more speaker before you find out whether you're in the DIL 100 or not. Stuart Clark, MBE, recent MBE, Director of Leeds Digital Festival. We're going to ask Stuart. Stuart's supporting the Digital Leaders 100, coming to Leeds, and I was very keen for him to, particularly for the online audience, to maybe say a few words about Leeds and what's happening here digitally. So Stuart, come on up.
I think that photo is about 5 years old. I'm going to have to change it at some point. But yeah, thank you. Welcome to Leeds. For people who haven't been to Leeds before, the weather is always like this. I can promise you, it's just absolutely amazing. And Freddie, you'll know when you were up last month, it's beautiful. And so I run something called the Leeds Digital Festival. We've been going since 2016. It's an open platform event. In the last 2 weeks in September, we have about 220, 240 events on fintech, health tech, data, coding, careers, and anything you can think of. And we also launched this year a new platform called Leeds Digital, which is an all-year-round platform, which has enabled us to support other events and really interesting programs. Of course, and we're really excited to be supporting digital leaders this year, and particularly because the awards are going to be in Leeds on the 22nd of June, first time outside of London. And I love the hashtag Not Just London, because that's a big thing for Leeds. We all know that everything gets centred on London. And we saw the changes to government departments a couple of months ago. So we had the new Department of Science, Innovation, Technology, which is a great thing. It's bringing everything together. Then they also announced 12 new non-executive directors. Only 11 were based in London, and the other was based in Cambridge. And I'm thinking, well, what about Leeds, Manchester? Even people from Birmingham. All this amazing stuff that's going outside of London, and that talent and that innovation that we have outside. So we should all do more for that. And as I say, it's really exciting that we're going to have Digital Leaders, the awards up in Leeds. And when I was thinking about what to say today, I was all of the statistics. We've got 3,900 tech firms in Leeds. We've got 140,000 people employed in tech in the city region. We have 26% of all the data scientists in the UK in Leeds, 27% of all the health tech professionals in Leeds. So it's a big, thriving community. But it's not just about numbers, and numbers can be really boring if I just spent time talking about those. But it's about that collaboration, it's about that innovation, how do you bring people together? And it's events like this with the DPA and digital leaders, bringing people, how can we help each other? So I'm quite a visual person. I'm going to show you one thing. And this is something we put together a couple of years ago. And this is Leeds. So it's a tech map of Leeds, and you'll see the heart in the middle, and that's the key thing about Leeds. And it is collaborative, it is innovative, it's a really generous place, and we can't wait for you all to come to the awards on the 22nd of June, because you'll be welcome, and I can guarantee the weather will be the same, because it's always like this. And it's just great to see Robin and the team and Paul and everybody here today. So thank you for all coming today, and it's hopefully we'll see you next month as well.
Well done, Stuart. A great advocate for Leeds as a digital city. So it is time for the people in the room, and equally importantly for the people watching online, to find out who is in this year's Digital Leaders 100. We have 457 entries. We had 21 brilliant judges, including Elizabeth Anderson. Thank you for being a judge this year. And they have narrowed those down to 100 finalists or DL list 100 list members, and they're split across 10 categories. So I'm just going to show you 10 categories and 10 finalists in each category. So let's just press on. So our first category is AI and Data Innovation of the Year 2023, and here are our finalists. I'm not proposing to read them all out, but hopefully the people who want to know whether they're on the list will be studying this slide online and in the room. I'm not, as I say, I'm not, I think given time, I'm not going to read them all out. That's our first category. Our second category is Digital Leader of the Year, and here are the finalists. Matt Adam from We Are Digital, I will name them as their people. Diane Barlow, who's CI at the Food Standards Agency. Lara Burns, CDO for the Scouts. Kat Dixon, many of you will know, a director at Snook. Nick Earle, CEO at IS. I probably mispronounced that, Nick, so I do apologise. Shruti Kohli, many of you will know Shruti. Dr. Shruti Kohli, she's lead data scientist at DWP. Karen Meachan from Scotland, Scotland is. Rashik Palmer, who I know is Leeds-based, Group CEO for BCS. Helen Thomas, Digital Health and Care Wales. And Steve Westgarth, Global Head of Engineering for Halion. Congratulations to them. Our next category is Digital Public Service Innovation of the Year. So we have Swindon, DWP Digital in there twice. The Environment Agency in York are a finalist, just picking out a few local wins. Good to see Northern Ireland in there, and also Salford City Council, pleased to see them in there, and Glasgow. Our next category is Digital Skills or Talent Initiative of the Year. So OpenAge, Go On Northern Ireland. Pleased to see that Good Things Foundation are a finalist this year. Well done. La Fosse, Rolls-Royce, Scouts, City of Westminster, Tech Women, Tech Pixies, and Twin Science. Our next category is Digital SME of the Year 2023. Here are our finalists: AbilityNet, Leeds-based Data City, IOB Your Best in Views, Mintago, Peak Vision, Smart Curriculum. The Royal Engineers, slightly odd one here, but I have to do what the judges tell me, and the Royal Engineers have made it into the SME category. Time to Spare and We Are Digital. Emerging Tech Initiative of the Year 2023. Some really good finalists. I'll just sort of say how you can vote for people and find out more about them in a minute. But congratulations to everyone who's made the top 10. Our next category is Geospatial Innovation of the Year 2023. Good to see LNER in there. Office for National Statistics and Ordnance Survey made it this year, and Stockport in the northwest. And one of the apps on my phone, What 3 Words? And then our next category is Green Tech Innovation of the Year. And the finalists this year for 2023 are... We're getting near the end of our categories. Health Tech Innovation of the Year, really important one. Got some great finalists this year. Congratulations to all of you. Here you come. I know the Digital Leaders team are tweeting along to this, so you'll be seeing your names appearing in Twitter as well if you're involved. So do retweet your success. And I think this is our last category, and one of my personal favorite categories, because we always just get such incredible young people nominated each year, and we normally meet them fairly early on in their career. like 5 years after they've been a young digital leader, we kind of bump into them again doing something even more amazing than when we first met them. So I won't make you wait any longer. Here are finalists for 2023. Julia Carlton at GWD, I think she's Leeds based. Subhash Chatterjee, he's from Hull, another Yorkshire success. Ben Coleman at DWP Digital, Jack Francis, Jamie Garrett, Dr. Patrick Hart, who is under 30, I promise. I should also apologise for Patrick for saying that. Adam Lissick, Olivia Maxwell, Femi Ololaide Coombs, I'll be able to say that by the time we get to the finals, or the awards, and Ali Zlatar. So congratulations to all of you. So it's nearly time to open the vote and to just press the button and officially, I should just explain how that works. So what happens now is all 100 go forward to a final round of judging. Our 21 judges will convene again for each of the categories and decide on a runner-up and a winner, and we will announce them on the 22nd of June. As Stuart very kindly said, we're at the Royal Armouries in Leeds, and hopefully our digital leaders community will come to Leeds for this amazing weather they've discovered only happens here, for a fantastic celebration. But we'll also be announcing who the winners are, and we'll find out who the winners are for each category through the judges now selecting a winner and a runner-up in each of the categories. The other thing we do have a public vote, so we sort of let everybody say who they think should be the overall winner, and there's a people's vote, and it's that we open today. So as well as going to the digileaders100.com website to see the Deal 100, find out more about them, click on the links, you can actually go on there and vote for your favourites. And I'm going to invite Terry Dunn from Inaculum, who's come all the way from Ireland today to be in Leeds, to just come up and press the button and perform that service. Terry.
Where's your button? Vote. And voting is now open. I have to be honest, I was not expecting to be speaking this morning. Robin surprised me with that. And I was thinking, what am I going to say? Now as I stand here, I feel I have probably too much to say. I'm delighted to be in Leeds. Leeds is a city I only discovered about a month ago, and that's because we had some mobile coverage survey teams working in the northern cities in advance of the launch of our mobile signal strength surveys. And it's just a wonderful city. But it's interesting that I'm here at the launch of the DPA plan, where 5G is so important to digital poverty and it's a solution to digital poverty. And as I say, for our mobile coverage service, we covered Leeds, Newcastle and Liverpool and Manchester, and I would like to offer that data, if it's of interest, to Colin and his team. And that's it. Thank you very much. Sorry, I was a bit nervous.
Great, thanks, Terry. Playing shamelessly to the room, I just thought we would assemble our Yorkshire finalists, just so for a bit of local interest as well as online. Those are our kind of 8 finalists who are based in Yorkshire. And also a shameless plug. I do hope you'll come and join us on the 22nd of June to see who the winners are. And we're really excited about bringing our sort of national community. The finalists, when you go and look at them, the finalists are from places like Aberdeen and Land's End. It's incredibly spread out. I think Scotland has 12 of the finalists. Northern Ireland, Wales all have a lot of finalists, as well as the rest of England. So they'll all be descending on Leeds, and we're very excited that Stuart's going to rabble-rouse a welcome Yorkshire digital community to to welcome them on that day, but that's really looking forward to that as well. So the last thing I've got to do here is hand back to Neil McLean, who is Chair of Trustees at the Learning Foundation, to formally close the event. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I used to be a teacher. You're going to have to do a lot better than that. Good afternoon. Thank you. Just checking that we're all still there. So it's my privilege to, I chair the Learning Foundation, and we were one of the people who kicked off the Digital Poverty Alliance. And I just want to say some words. I've actually got a book full of things that I wanted to say. I think I'm going to be struggling to do that. And of course, as you go through, you know, what people talk about, you pick up on other things. So in no particular order, first off, as everybody else said, it's brilliant to be in Leeds. I want to say something about it's brilliant to be in a library. In the words of the Manic Street Preachers, libraries gave us power, you know? It was an amazing part of, sometimes the Victorian reformers actually got things right. Not always, but sometimes they did. And to build a national information infrastructure through public libraries was a remarkable achievement. The second thing, I want to say something specific about this library, because it's in two parts. And again, that was an amazing bit of foresight. In one part, it is what you traditionally think of as a library. It's a place you go for information, to find books, to find literature, to do whatever. In another part, you could pay your gas bill. And in terms of the online world, part of the question that people made earlier on, how do we engage people? The foresight of the designers of this building thought maybe someone will come in rent arrears and go out wondering who Dante is. Yeah? Engaging people through the transactional, but not just staying at the level of the transactional, moving them on to the stuff that's actually about, you know, learning bigger things. I'm going to mention both my mum and dad. My mum was a librarian. Well, she was actually a library assistant, other side of the Pennines. She got her laptop and went online when she was 90. A pandemic kind of thing. She phoned me up. She said, what's the number for that thing you were looking at the other day? And I said, what do you mean? How do I find it? What's the number? I said, well, when you were a library assistant, did all the people walk into the library knowing the Dewey Decimal System? And she said, no, that was my job. They came in with an inquiry, and I found for them the resource, whatever they need. I said, brilliant, works exactly the same on the internet. It's just it's automated, and you'll never see the technology that actually does that. And as I say, that was at age 90 when she became involved in all of this. About 20 years ago, I got excited, interested, scared, passionate about digital inclusion. And those of us working together at the time, I was working with the schools minister at the time, came up with the 4 essential aspects of digital poverty. And I want to say, as we saw it then, and whether they still hold up. So the first thing, access. And we've already heard about the challenges of rurality and other sorts of things to do with access. But it's only access if it's access to you. Access isn't a general kind of thing. We talked about skills. I actually prefer, to be honest, the notion of digital literacy, because I don't like the idea that just because people are disadvantaged, they should be kept at the level of the purely transactional thing. I think it is about what this building symbolises. It's about people, irrespective of disadvantage, also being critical users of the technology, having opinions on how the technology is used, not being done to by the technology, however benevolent those services are, that they are in charge of it all. Third thing, motivation. Motivation comes from something being joined up and working for you, you know? And we're a distance away from services being connected in that sort of way. And then the last one that we came up with was trust. And trust comes from 2 things. Trust comes from a feeling of your own capability and confidence in being able to do things. But it also comes from a feeling that those who are providing things to you are ethical, professional, have your interests at heart. I think they hold up, and I think the plan that's been developed is designed to address all 4 of those. I want to say something about timing, because one of the big pushbacks we always get is, why are you talking about this now? Beveridge, the Beveridge report that laid the foundation for the welfare state as we know it, for the National Health Service as we know it, was commissioned and written in 1942. There were a few other things going on in 1942. But the government wanted to think, at some point we are out of this, and we shouldn't kick the can down the road of thinking then is the time to address this important thing. You know, now. We may be in a cost of living crisis, but now. We may be coming out of COVID, but now. You know, not wait till things have settled down. Do exactly what Beveridge did. I want to talk about a couple of other things. One is years ago, my first bit of sort of little bit software I actually wrote for someone was a kid I taught. I taught him physics. He didn't have, I think, cerebral palsy, didn't have the use of his arms or his hands. I was having to act as amanuensis in his examinations, yeah? Whenever there was a drawing thing like that. He had a machine, you'll hear my voice, I wrote a piece of software so we could draw the graphs needed in what was then O-level physics. He was really pleased about it. The regulations didn't allow it. So the other aspect of digital inclusion is to consider all those other things that wrap round it that get in the way of us being truly digitally inclusion. And they're not always the things you think about. They're things that come from other bits of organisation, other bits of regulation. And we need to be as positive about those as we are about other things. Why digital inclusion? Why digital poverty? There's a nice line from Steve Jobs, whatever you think about Steve Jobs, which is that technology is the amplifier of our intellect. Yeah? Everything that you do can be amplified for good or ill by the use of technology. You know? You want to write rubbish, you can write a lot of it. You want to cause trouble, you can cause a lot of it. You want to learn, you can learn a lot. You want to do, you can do a lot. It is an amplifier and it sits behind everything now, a point that Julia made. It's all pervasive. So that's why it feels right to us to focus on digital poverty. It's going to be the great enabler rather than the magnifier as it currently is of other forms of disadvantage. Yeah? We need to flip that all around. And then the last thing from me, which is an image that will stick in your head as we go into lunch. Producing a report, a document like this is a little bit like giving birth to a giraffe. You know? And I admire the fact that Tom is able to sit down. It's a remarkable achievement just to get it out there. And then it totters. And it staggers to its feet. And then it walks with luck. And then it runs. And then it does whatever. But it does that with assistance. So the last thing from me is a kind of plea, collaboration, community, working together around all this. We need to work together on projects. We need to share ideas and expertise. We need to reach out across the community because an issue here might have a solution there. Yeah? We need to connect people, yes, who are part of the solution to all this, but we need to recognize that solutions are bespoke to the particular needs of particular individuals, particular circumstances. So this doesn't stop here. To take another quote from the 1942, it's perhaps the end of the beginning. Yeah? We have a plan, we have a strategy, we'll be wanting to review it, and we will be wanting to work with you as we do that. So if I can encourage you all to be as involved as much as you possibly can, because I think it is in our collective interests, you know, to support this. So thank you. I'm Neil McLean. I chair the Learning Foundation Trustees, and I chair the Digital Poverty Alliance. Enjoy lunch, and I think I'm done, aren't I, Paul? So thank you again for attending. Enjoy.